Hi everyone, welcome to Cosmic Rush. My name is Priscilla and today I have another tips and tricks video on how to terraform landscape and design. And today specifically I wanted to talk about two design concepts as well as show you a shape that I think will cover 90% of your terraforming and build needs. So let's head outside and I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so we're outside and the two concepts I wanted to chat with you guys is symmetry versus asymmetry. You've probably heard of these design concepts, and so I wanted to chat about how these two concepts work in your designs and why asymmetry can work better in more natural, organic environments and settings. So let's get started. Let's get out of this camera view here. Alright, so this is the shape I wanted to show you guys, the almighty bean. I think the shape is super versatile, especially with terraforming and your build needs. And this shape in particular plays up off of the concept of asymmetry. It's taking an unequal or imbalanced shape and creating visual interest by using different elements to create visual balance. So as opposed to symmetrical design as we have on this side, where it takes mirroring and using items in repetition to create balance, asymmetry is about creating visual balance with the arrangement of different elements. So you can take different items, whether that be size, shape, or color, and trying to balance that out with other elements, which makes for a more dynamic and more interesting design style. And I would say that symmetrical design, even though I've done it here and it actually doesn't look too bad, I would say symmetrical design works better with more modern or contemporary designs, like if you're creating buildings or using the wall items as well, or if you're doing a build that requires more landscaping. Landscaping is very intentional. What symmetrical design is, it is very curated and very intentional. So with a more landscaped area like a playground or a park, which you would see more intentional landscaping, symmetrical design would definitely work there. If you are creating a forest or meadow area or farm, even farms are also intentional as well, but in a more natural environment, I would say asymmetrical design works better just because it creates more natural and organic shapes. And why this bean shape in particular works is because it creates pockets of negative space in particular. So if you watch my last tips video on landscaping, you know how I talked about creating natural negative space by the placement of your trees, by offsetting your trees. You could do the same with that with your cliffs or with your pathways if you're creating mini builds or filler spots. This more asymmetrical shape can be really handy in just creating something more interesting as far as a build is concerned. So if I do a little example here to create a more symmetrical kind of camping area in front of this more landscape build here, again, symmetrical design plays off of using repeating items and just basically mirroring one side over the other. And what this does, it inherently has balance because you're using the same items. So this is a more symmetrical design approach. Nothing wrong with it, and in certain instances I think calls for it, like I said, in more contemporary or modern builds and certain items like buildings, or when you're creating buildings, symmetrical design I feel is more fitting and works. And with asymmetrical design, I think works more in a more natural environment. So to create a more asymmetrical design with this campfire seating area, you can also use the log bench here. But to balance off this log bench, maybe you might want to use a couple of the natural stool items. So the log stool, and maybe the stone stool. So we're creating some visual balance by taking two smaller items of different sizes and textures and balancing that out with the wild log bench here. So this is an example of a more asymmetrical layout with these different decorating items here. And again, this pocket just screams to be filled as well. And again, these pockets just makes for great places to fill with other elements, and to also give some balance to the asymmetrical, I should say, positive shape. The decayed guardian here. It's kind of fun. So you could see how this shape, we're creating visual balance by filling this pocket, this empty pocket here, with a larger item to balance out the large kind of seating area where the stone path is. So this is one way on how to create visual balance with these different items, and how the shape in particular is just a little bit more interesting, a little bit more dynamic compared to a more symmetrical design, which is a little bit static and very, straightforward design. So I highly encourage when doing different filler builds or terraforming in general to try out this asymmetrical concept. And the bean is a very simple shape to use if you're wanting to explore more asymmetrical design. So I have two asymmetrical kind of dirt paths here to do as an example in real time. And so, like I said, it's all about creating visual balance using a variety of items. So if we plant a tree here, and I usually like to enclose my build as well, just to polish it a little bit. So I'll just enclose this build a little bit. Here. So you can start off actually with you can kind of create a symmetrical kind of build in an asymmetrical shape, which is also really interesting. But to balance these two trees here, which are quite tall and pretty quote unquote heavy as far as visual items, let us fill that with some items that can kind of balance that out. So if we place in some crops here, maybe like as a mini farm build. So to balance off the two trees, having multiple smaller items can balance that out as well. take out these in the front here, and just to close it off, this build, I'll continue on with the country fencing, and then we have this light, again, pocket here. I love pockets of negative space to fill, so we can actually, let's fill that with a garden cart maybe. So we can place a garden cart there. And maybe add a shovel. And I'd like to add a couple weeds here as well, just to fill out the space. But yeah, here is a design that kind of uses symmetry towards the back here, but to balance out the quote-unquote heaviness or the scale of the trees, we have lots of multiple crops in front of it to balance it out. So that's kind of one example there. For this area, let's place the trees in this pocket here. And let's do maybe a cedar tree to switch things up a bit. And let's place a shrub here. And for fencing, let's add this vertical fence to balance out the height of the trees on the right side. I'll kind of visually balance that with the height of the vertical fencing here. And let's see, for here, maybe to balance out again the height and weight of the cedar trees. You know what, let's make this a kind of picnic spot. I think one thing to keep in mind when doing builds or filler spaces is at least to have some sort of direction or idea of what kind of build you would like to create in the particular space you're building in, whether that be a playground, a park, having a more natural forest area. Just having that direction is good. As far as my design style or how I like to design, I kind of wing it and kind of free form it by just placing items down and seeing what works visually. So for this picnic area, I only have this log round table, so let me place that there. So this kind of size of this log table can balance out the weight of the trees there. And let's place some benches. So we can do a bench there. And we could, you know what, let's make it symmetrical. Incorporate some symmetry in this build here. Of course, we have to place some food on the table just to fill things out. You know how much I love my chip snacks. And let's place another item here. What can you find at a picnic? What kind of food? Let's do a fruit basket. Sure, why not? Some fruit and chips. Sure. We have two items on the diagonal balancing each other out. And then let us place maybe a little A bonfire. Maybe another little bonfire here. And you know what? Instead of the opposite stool on the opposite side, let's create some asymmetrical balance. Let's put in a stone stool here. And kind of wanted to add a gyroid. Put that guy here. That out. Let's place some kind of low profile items in the front. Maybe some leaves. Let's put a pile of leaves there, and what? Let's place more fencing. Maybe this country fence to close it off so we have some entrance here. I like enclosing my build, so let's place some trees to kind of close off this particular build. So using the same elements, this shrub in front of the tree like that. So this tree is kind of balancing also the two trees over here. So that is another example of kind of some asymmetrical design. We have some symmetry with the log table and benches here, but then we have some asymmetry going on with this kind of mini build in front of the campfire, which is balanced off by, again, the picnic area and some of the landscaping done at the front here. So again, more interesting shape. You could see how the shape itself with that pocket of negative space kind of fills itself out. So instead of filling the entire rectangular area with dirt path, this kind of jutted dirt area here kind of just creates more interesting visual. So something to keep in mind. As long as you're having some pockets of negative space to fill in, I think that's the key as far as creating a more interesting and dynamic shape. And the larger you go with your terraforming, these are kind of the examples I've done as landscaping examples that uses asymmetrical design and the bean shape. We have a more bean-shaped pond here at the bottom of this 3-tiered cliff. Again, using the bean shape for the cliffs. If I go up here, you could see the bean shapes. We have the focal point of the cedar tree on the far right, balanced off by the 2 hydrangea bushes on the 3rd tier over there. And then to balance off this cliff and pond area, we kind of have this seating area here to balance that off. And again, I use the bean-ish like shape to create this kind of walking path here. And again, there's pockets of negative space where I've placed landscaping right over here and the cedar tree over here. So this is kind of a landscape example of asymmetry and using the bean shape. As far as interior design, if we go back into my home here, the classroom that I've created for the intro also plays up off on the asymmetry concept. And you're probably using asymmetry design in your build without even knowing it, or if you didn't have words to put to how you're designing, you're probably already using it. So I just wanted to put into words as to why asymmetry works and why it's super interesting to use on your island. So as you can see here, we got the symmetry of the chalkboards, but with the back of the classroom, we have the large bookcase on the left side, balanced off by the shorter bookcase and the more smaller items on the right side here. So you can see how symmetry and asymmetry works together. We have the symmetrical, placements of the kids' desks, and then we also have kind of the symmetrical placement of the lockers and the high countertop here, but that is balanced out with different kind of design elements, with the globe and the projector and box here balanced off by the science experiment and book. So if you look throughout your island, you're probably already using asymmetrical design in your builds, and you just didn't realize it. Anyways, guys, that is everything. If you enjoyed this video, definitely like and subscribe if you found it helpful. Yes, so if you're struggling with creating builds or different fillers on your island, definitely try asymmetry design out. You're probably already doing it without knowing it. Hopefully the idea of creating pockets in the negative space with your terraforming or the paths are helpful with filling out different areas, making it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more dynamic. One concept of symmetry or asymmetry isn't better than the other. I think both of them are really useful depending on the style or theme of your island and depending on the build and items as well. So as you can see, you can also use symmetry within an asymmetrical space, and also vice versa. You can definitely use asymmetry in a more symmetrical space as well. So definitely play around with it. I think testing and trying things out to balance your design is what it's all about, and seeing what works. So that is everything, guys. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you guys later.